Good evening. Welcome to Stay Tuned. I'm Casey Nolan, and tonight we have just one rule here on Stay Tuned. No one can ask anyone where they went to high school. We know that narrative. It's about a new narrative tonight. Where is St. Louis headed? Tonight we're talking civic pride in St. Louis. What's right with our city, and what can we all do to make it better? Stay tuned. Okay, but before we talk about where we're headed, it's important to know where we've come from. Here now from the 9 Network is Jim Kircher.
At the time of the World's Fair, civic leaders were using the phrase, "a new St. Louis," and planning for the time when there would be 1 million people living within the city limits. It never got there, but it took a half a century to realize it. Cities like St. Louis in post-war America were facing decline, and while construction of the Arch was a bold statement of the city's pride in its past and hope for its future, so were the massive slum clearances, urban renewal, and the big thinking of public housing, most famously and infamously Pruitt-Igoe. And for a time, this would be the unfortunate symbol of that line of thinking. Still, the Arch stands, and not just as a triumph of design and engineering, but of civic focus and political clout. This was, after all, your tax dollars at work. But there were other successes that rallied the city, even caught the country's and the world's attention. Certainly there was nothing like the Lindbergh Flight of 1927. A global celebration of the solo flight from New York to Washington is hard to imagine in our times. Lindbergh was the most famous man in the world, and the Spirit of St. Louis was the most famous airplane. The success of that flight was due both to the cocky confidence of the young pilot and the financial backing of St. Louis business leaders. Albert Bond Lambert, for one, Chamber of Commerce President Harold Bixby for another. St. Louis helped raise the money for the plane and the flight, and they got to name the airplane. The Spirit of St. Louis was already the city's promotional motto. But keep in mind that this could have literally crashed and burned. It was a risk to put a city's name on what many felt was going to be an embarrassing, if not deadly, failure. This could have been the Pruitt-Igoe of the 1920s. But it turned out better than anyone could have imagined. And in the 20s, a city associated with aviation was about as modern and high-tech as you could get. Between the fair and the flight, there was something that happened in St. Louis less remembered today, in part because it was an event staged not for the world, but just for us. In 1914, civic leaders organized a huge celebration in Forest Park. It was called the Pageant and Mask, and it marked the 150th anniversary of St. Louis's founding. They built a stage in the lake at the base of Art Hill, and for 4 days, a cast of thousands presented the history of St. Louis, starting with the mound builders. This was the brainchild of one Charlotte Rumbold of the Parks Department, and she didn't just want to put on a show. She felt that the collective teamwork on a project like this could carry over to bigger, more serious issues facing the city. Over 4 days, the city did come together. Some 400,000 people came to Art Hill. These were the biggest crowds in the park since the World's Fair. Charlotte Rumbold's philosophy was this: a city that plays together will work together.
Okay, so now we have some history to work from. Let's move forward on this discussion. We are welcomed back into the studio by our distinguished panel of guests who are going to amaze us with their insights. No, I actually believe that. Alonzo Lee, Grammy-winning producer, born and raised. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being back. You're on one of our first pilots.
Yes, yes, it was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad you're back. Thank you so much. Alex Enan from Next STL, also a return visit. Thank you so much. And a return visit from Joe Wilson, too. I jokingly said we have you on because you have cool hair, but
thanks, appreciate it.
You cut it, I hear, so I don't know if that's going to work out, Samson. Maybe before we get going here, should we define civic pride a little bit? It means a lot of things to a lot of people. What does that, Alonzo, Alex, and Joe, what does that mean to you guys?
Well, to me, it's pretty much what it means to be excited or enthusiastic about what's going on in your city and why, something unique about where you're from. And not necessarily so much of a particular product or brand, but just something unique to your experience and where you're from and what that may mean to an outsider.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you guys on board with that? Is that?
Yeah, I think one of the things we were talking about earlier is having community confidence as a component of civic pride. So there's kind of the rah-rah pride, which is something akin to maybe patriotism. And then there's that confidence you have from being from a place, investing in a place, helping create a place. So you can walk out and say, look, my hands are on this, I own it. I'm going to defend it. This is mine, and we own it. And I'm going to be proud to share it off. And whether that's literally your street corner, your school, your business, or something like that. So I think this idea of community confidence maybe is something that I latch onto in terms of what creates pride in my mind.
Do we have that confidence, or do you find yourself defending it from time to time?
Defending it constantly.
Defending it. Why is that? What are you defending about our city, about our region?
There's a public perception that we're a dangerous place, that there's nothing going on here. I went to Mizzou for my undergrad, and friends from Texas, New York, like places not as far away, Louisville, they all thought that our city was on the downhill slide if it wasn't already in the gutter. Mm-hmm. It didn't help that there was a string of really bizarre crimes that happened at the time too. It was really difficult to defend a place that when they drove through, all they saw were dilapidated houses, empty warehouses. It was tough.
You travel the country, are you defending this town?
Yeah, absolutely. Like in terms of business, for example, there are people who were working with myself and my organization and other organizations from St. Louis, and they worked with both of us independently outside of here, but we didn't work together in St. Louis. So it gave the perception of like something's wrong with St. Louisans in terms of collaborating and having those conversations in our community and doing things together.
I think one of the points I made earlier is that I grew up in Indiana and I've been in town a little over 8 years, but I was 5 hours away from here and less than that at college for 27 years, and St. Louis made no impression on me at all.
First of all, I'd just like to point out it's a long time to be in college, but anyway.
Hey.
No, but go ahead.
I didn't have this idea that St. Louis was dangerous or empty or dilapidated or was losing jobs or anything. It just literally had no impression on me at all. And so, which is great in a way. When I came here, I really had an open mind and saw some wonderful things and saw some things maybe that aren't so great. But I think a lot of times that perception that other people, you can be from anywhere and you can meet someone from New York or Texas and they're going to think their home is better, right? Fine, that's great. And so we're a little bit defensive unnecessarily. And I think some of that is because we are fractured as a region. We don't necessarily feel ownership in the region. And so we do in sports teams, maybe we do in cultural institutions. But, I was talking to Todd Swanstrom earlier, who I think is on the show later. He pointed out that only 11% of our metro area votes for our mayor, votes for the mayor of St. Louis. 11%. So the vast majority of our region isn't invested in the success of our mayor, which then translates to our city and our institutions and our street corners and everything else, whether it's violence or other things. So we're missing out on that collaborative investment that really would make us proud, I think.
That's not our only challenge either. What's something you see as a challenge for our region?
To me, it's just climbing out of the hole that we've lazily dug ourselves into. At least you started off with a blank slate when you got to the city. We played Detroit in the World Series not that long ago, and about the same time, our status as the nation's most dangerous city came out, and we held that over Detroit. But everybody kind of take that, Detroit. Why are we proud of that? It was really disappointing, and a lot of people said it tongue-in-cheek, but I think that hurt a lot of people. We've got to dig out of that hole.
Well, I think it's important is to embrace a different model in terms of abundance, and it's not so much that it's a scarcity concept where there's not enough and we have to kind of scrap for things, and just be proud and understand that there's enough for everyone. And again, I'm going off of my experiences in leaving St. Louis and having a chance to see more and see how the cities are doing it, and just to know there's more opportunities out there. So I think that's the important thing to embrace, is that we have to understand as a community that there's more than just what we see in front of us.
What else do we need to do to kind of overcome this, the things we've talked about so far? And who needs to be involved in this?
I think you hit on something awesome right there, that there's enough to go around, because I think there's an us versus them mentality, not just of the city against other places, but every neighborhood against every other neighborhood. Sure. Everyone's trying to just get an edge over somebody else for whatever small business. If it's a Walgreens or a CVS or something like that coming into the neighborhood, at least that's something coming in. And people fight over that, because that is tax dollars. That there's something to that. We need to get over the idea that there's only a finite amount of resources that we're arguing over, and that if we work together, we can potentially bring in more. There's more than just what we have right now.
Yeah, we have to find a way to develop a narrative about ourselves. And when people ask what St. Louis is and what the history is, and I've asked that question of a lot of people when, as I've lived here and gotten to know the city, and it's pretty thin, and I don't think, I was here 6 years before someone told me that Ike and Tina Turner made their gold records here. I mean, a couple blocks from here, right? Not very many people know that. Now, unfortunately, the other side of that is that site is currently a parking lot. So, we don't have everything that some other cities have in a concrete, physical way to celebrate, but we have an incredible history here. Our challenge is we have a legacy of once, quote, being greater. So you hear again and again and again that we're not what we used to be. TWA used to be here. All these things used to be here.
We had the World's Fair, and we were the 4th largest city.
So somewhat we say, so what? And it's easy for a Denver. They're as great as they've ever been. They're as big as they've ever been. That's wonderful. But we have to get past that, and we have to be proud of what we have, and I don't know, stop apologizing. And the who, local government has to start collaborating, and we're starting to see it in the county, but we can't survive with 90 municipalities now in a separate city, and our political leaders have to show the way in a sense, and take some regional pride and cooperate with each other.
Yeah, this is not a conversation just about the city limits. This is a conversation about and it's two conversations. What did you say? Go ahead.
Oh, no, you were just talking about the 90-something unique sets of government that are in our region. Nobody wants to give up their little kingdom. You might only have a couple of hundred residents or something like that, but you don't want to give up your kingdom. It's really tough, I think, for a lot of the mayors and the government officials that exist there, because they do care about their community, but they also don't want to give up that small government, that one of their constituents can come up to them and say, hey, what's going on with the trash? Because the service sucks right now. Can you do something about that? He's your neighbor. The mayor's your neighbor. He can go do something.
The only thing I can do right now is get Ed Reggie in on this conversation, because we want you in on this conversation, coming to us from social media. Ed, can you please tell us how that will happen tonight, please?
Absolutely, Casey. So tonight we're talking about you, about St. Louis and the region. And we've made it easy. A couple ways for you to join in. We want to hear from you, your personal stories, your comments. There's a couple ways you could actually join in. We've actually put a question up on our Facebook page, The 9 Network, earlier today. And we want you to put some comments there, feedback. What do you think? And you'll help drive the conversation tonight. Also, you can join in using Twitter by using the hashtag StayTunedSTL. So, just join in, and we'll be using your comments throughout the evening.
Okay, Ed, thank you very much. And in a little bit, we're going to be talking about how we take the ideas we're talking about here, we market them to folks outside of our region. But before we do that, we spoke earlier this week via Google Hangout to some folks in other cities that are already making that happen from very different perspectives. A person from Detroit and a person from Austin, Texas. Take a look.
Thank you guys both for joining us. We have here today with us Achille Bianchi from Detroit. And Achille, you're a journalist, correct?
Yes.
And Steve Berkew, Steve, you're down in Austin, coming to us from Texas. You're a local business owner. And we'll start with you, Steve. Something people may have, they may know about you that they didn't know, may be on the car in front of them at the stoplight that says, "Keep Austin weird."
Santa Cruz, Louisville, Erie, Pennsylvania, lots of copiers.
But you're the original. We're glad to have you here. Here in St. Louis, we have what I like to call the 1904 complex sometimes, because in 1904 we were the 4th largest city. We had the World's Fair and any other number of things that we have. You can make the argument on certain statistics, we've been declining ever since, so to speak. Does Detroit have an issue with its past greatness? Do you have a complex there at all in Detroit?
I'm 27 years old. I think my generation doesn't. I think our parents' generations do. They remember Detroit as being this like remarkable place that's just filled with people and places to go and things to do, which it still is, of course. But I think that because we don't have that reference point, that we don't care as much about it.
We have it a lot easier. See, when you guys were having World's Fairs, we were fighting Comanches. So really, it's all pretty much forward for the whole time. We haven't had a chance to go backward yet.
What is Austin doing right, do you think, that gives it a pretty positive reputation?
Well, I mean, first place, the city does support locally owned businesses. I believe that locally owned businesses have a huge impact on the pride that is necessary to have civic pride.
Akile, I saw you nodding your head when he was talking about local businesses. Does that ring true with you in Detroit?
I think it gives a lot of like artists and farmers and whoever, the ability to produce local products and keep them in the city, keep those dollars like turning over in the city, and then in the state overall too, because what helps the city helps the state.
I've made a few friends from Detroit, and there is definitely a sense of civic pride, as we're calling it this week, about what's going on in your city. Fair to say, though, that's not always the external perception, maybe?
But I think the thing that surprises people most when they get to this city is just the sense of community that we all have, and like kind of like the spirit of collaboration and the willingness to work together. It's like we've gone through iterations of solutions in this city, and I think we've come at a point where collaboration is key. And I think, if we really want to get some stuff done, we need to pull together. If you take the Detroit Works projects and the city's Detroit Future City framework that was just released last week, massive urban planning framework, just like a huge 2-year undertaking. But just like the man and women hours that put that together, to basically draft a framework that's going to take us 50 years into the future. They had research and development from all across the board, and then they really dug in and got into the community and tried to get what they felt and just like incorporate those opinions into the framework.
Yeah, it's obviously critically important that the city be doing something that's supportive of this, that makes the citizenry actually happy to be in the city and participating. More participation, the better, actually.
So is it important to you that Detroit be seen differently from the outside?
It is important, and we do like to, kind of see ourselves as like becoming a model city for like, urban agriculture or like industrial diversity, what have you. But I think that it's not as important as people think, but it's definitely a factor.
In terms of civic pride, I mean, I think that it does have an impact. I mean, I think that people feel better if the other people are validating whatever it is they think is good about their city.
Okay, so what would you recommend to a St. Louis audience? Akile, we'll start with you. If we want to improve upon our civic pride at all, what would you say to us?
I recommend focusing on what's local and what's there in St. Louis that's different, what's not everywhere else.
When cities are evaluating, what they have within their boundaries, I think considering their assets is probably one of the most important factors of it. And assets not being like buildings and parks, but how those buildings and parks can work for the people in the city. People are the assets. I think you could probably agree with that, Steve, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Akile Bianchi and Steve Berkew, thank you both for your time. We appreciate it. And
thank you.
Have fun in your towns. Keep it up.
Thank you. Come visit Detroit.
Thanks for having us.
So definitely a lot of talk there about a sense of collaboration, sense of community. Important conversation there too about the role of small business. All things we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But first, we took our cameras out into the St. Louis region this week and to the Twitterverse to ask you about our challenges here in the St. Louis region.
We're an old, like, Rust Belt city. Like, a lot of folks have left the city, and now it's just like people are now just coming back. And I think that that growth area is kind of scary for people. We're not like hip and new because we've got a lot of old buildings.
The weather?
The weather?
Yeah, it's crazy.
I think that the misconception is that St. Louis as a whole is really dangerous, but there instead are just some places you want to avoid.
You see today, yesterday used to be like 23, today is 68.
Maybe public transportation, the lack of it.
You see a lot of newspaper stories that are, we have a high crime rate and high STDs, all that fun stuff.
I think that there's still room for improvement.
A lot of good stuff to start a lot of good conversations there, but before we do, we want to get a little kind of a news update. Is that okay? Do you feel comfortable with that?
Well, I am the news guy.
You are the news guy. Thank you. Finally, someone in this conversation has to be.
I'm that egotistical, I'm crowning myself the king of news.
All right, very good. Well, then I'm going to ask you a lot of difficult questions.
Sure.
Okay, a symbol of our city, the gateway to the west, the Jefferson National Expansion Memorial. I'm mixing it all up. The Arch.
Yes.
Is going to be on the ballot to some degree. We want to transform the Arch grounds, some folks do, and they also want to levy a little tax to pay for it. Can you get us up to speed on what's kind of being called the Arch tax?
It's called the Arch.
Jason Rosenbaum, by the way, from the St. Louis Beacon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, everybody.
News King. Go ahead. So the Arch tax, explain, please.
It's called the Arch tax because, lazy journalists like me want a catchy shorthand for things. But it's a lot more complicated than that. Obviously, the fact is they're going to try to raise the sales tax by 3/16 of 1 cent, and it'll go basically in 3 different directions if it's passed by St. Louis County and another jurisdiction. The first will go toward this project to spruce up the Gateway Arch grounds. It would include a lot of different aspects, and long story short, the money toward that would go to pay off bonds that are going to be financed for a public portion of it. It also has private and state, federal, and other local funds. Other money goes toward local parks in St. Louis County and St. Louis City, as well as trails that are administered by Great Rivers Greenways. So the Arch tax it's probably called that colloquially. I may have mixed up that word.
No, it's fine.
Oh, okay, that's good.
You're the king. It's okay.
Because that's the most notable aspect.
Right.
Rarely do you see a situation where a local sales tax goes toward paying for improvements around a national park. And that's one of the reasons why proponents are excited about it and why detractors are speaking out against something like that.
Yeah, not everybody's on board. Is this something you think can pass?
Well, it depends. I think that the general consensus is something like this is going to have a lot of money behind it. Already a group known as Civic Progress, which is a coalition of various businesses around the St. Louis region, they're already gearing up to try to get people in St. Louis County and the city to vote for this by getting pretty sizable campaign contributions. And I think it remains to be seen whether the no side, so to speak, is going to be able to get the organization and the money behind that. Now, it could be a situation where people read about this and just don't warm up to the idea of this organically. It's possible, but right now the proponents are going to probably do whatever they possibly can to make sure it passes in those 2 jurisdictions. It won't be on the ballot in St. Charles, at least in April, because the county council there didn't take it up by a certain deadline.
And it has to pass in 2 of the 3.
It has to pass in St. Louis County, and it would have to pass in another jurisdiction. And both, assuming that the Board of Aldermen finally passes a bill tomorrow, Friday, it will be on both of those ballots April 2nd.
Okay, News King, I'm going to throw you a question you didn't know you were getting, perhaps. That's a symbol we're all proud of. We've heard from the sound bites and from Twitter, a symbol that we are not proud of, but people associate with us is crime. In less than 60 seconds, some crime stats were released by both the county and the city. Make sense of that.
Well, both the city and the county reported that major crimes were down by a certain degree in 2012 compared to 2011. I think, as other guests probably mentioned, despite the numbers, which is probably a good reaction, there's still this perception out there that there are areas of the city and the county where crime is a major issue, and I don't think it's a new problem. I don't think it's going away despite anything that's coming out new. I still think it's going to be an issue that this community, regardless of whether it's St. Louis City or North County or anywhere else, is going to be dealing with for a long time.
Jason Rosenbaum, St. Louis Beacon. Can I invite you to stick around? We do a little thing after the show that goes up on the web, and it's a lot of fun. Do you mind?
Well, I had a lot of fun last week, so I will accept your invitation.
Okay, very good. You get the sleepover invitation to the birthday party.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we've got a lot to talk about, and we're back at the table with a new group to talk about it with. Let me do introductions briefly. Ed Bryant with the St. Louis County Economic Council.
Yep.
And Tara Pham, Innovate STL. You'll tell us about that in just one second. And then Randy Vines runs a little shop called STL Style. And I have to say, you sell very handsome shirts.
And you are quite the model. Thank you.
Thank you.
Checks in the mail.
All right, so we talent and entrepreneurship is kind of the overarching theme of what we want to talk about here tonight. This is something you work directly with. How do we retain the brain in our region, if you will? Is that a problem, first of all?
I think the fact that brain drain is a problem is kind of an anomaly when you consider all of the resources that we do have in St. Louis. Really low cost of living, really high quality of life, access to lots of amenities. And it's sort of a small, big town, so it's really easy to access people. I mean, if you want to meet someone, if you're networking, it's really easy to do that here. And so all of those factors make St. Louis a great place for example, a recent college graduate to live in. And I think part of it is really just telling our story and getting the word out that it is such a good place.
Okay, is it a good place to do business? Do you do business?
Oh yeah, it's a great place to do business, and I'll talk about that in 1 second, but I just want to also address a very important point that I think needs to be made. We put a lot of emphasis, and rightly so, we put a lot of emphasis on retaining people. You know, college graduates, when they leave, when they graduate, we want them to stay in St. Louis, and that's very important, but it's also important to know that most cities lose a lot of college graduates. It's very rare that young people, upwardly mobile people, will stay in any one city for their entire life. So we need to recognize that's just a national trend. But what I think St. Louis is a leader in is the boomerang effect. And that's how many people do we all know who have come back to St. Louis after experiencing another place? And I think that's a very valuable experience these people have because they got perspective, and it makes them realize how great St. Louis really is, and that maybe, you know, this would be an option to come home to St. Louis because it offers some of the things that maybe the city they were in the interim didn't.
And I think you have to have a reason to come back. You know, if you have, like, I'm not a native, but I really love living here, and I think one of the things that we have to do a better job at is not only telling our story, but also taking advantage of the things that we already have and really appreciating the things that we have in our community and leveraging those things. I mean, in this area of entrepreneurship, we've got a lot of growth happening in the space, and it gives us an opportunity to grow our own stuff. You know, I worked for a Fortune 100 company that decided to leave the St. Louis region, and that company was headquartered in New York, but they sort of saw what was happening here in St. Louis as not really as important or close to what they were doing in New York, not as important. But I think if we have taken advantage of like really growing what we already have here, that we have the likelihood of those homegrown companies leaving is a lot lower than a company that's headquartered in Chicago or New York, whatever. And then it also creates a lot of civic pride there as well because it's homegrown. You know, we have our own. One of my favorite beers is a homegrown beer. You know, here, and I think I love this beer. And I'm going to drink that beer and not drink the beer that's from another area. So.
Okay, so what's in that story that we keep talking about? What should that story be if you're trying to convince?
I just feel like, in this global economy, in this world that we live in now, there's very little control cities really have from companies moving to someplace else, because it's less important for companies to be located in any one place. It's so global and everyone's connected in some way, and companies are going to move around, and employers are going to move around the country. Okay, what I think St. Louis needs to capitalize on is its inherent qualities, the infrastructure that it has here. It really kind of embodies all the attributes that a lot of people move away to other places looking for, and it's just not packaged well here. For some reason, we have a hard time trumpeting our strengths, as evidenced by all these crime statistics that get the headlines. What didn't really get its due credit is the fact that St. Louis is also ranked one of the most gay-friendly cities in the United States. This is a huge selling point for a city trying to reinvent itself and attract kind of a progressive, visionary crop of demographics. And
unique
I think
in the Midwest, perhaps.
Unique in the Midwest, like we have this great opportunity. Yeah, we're in flyover country, but we're this urban island, and we're so unadulterated and so wide open that you can really be a part of something great here. And it's a place, it's big enough that it matters nationally, but also intimate enough that you can make a difference and be noticed for your contribution.
You mentioned the boomerang effect, and maybe you appreciate it more when you leave and come back. And I'm thinking back to the conversation I had earlier this week from the gentleman from Austin. He said he doesn't really consciously always think about how awesome different things are, that when he has people come to town and visit him, they're just blown away by the things he takes for granted. Do we have an element of that in our town too?
Yeah, we do. We definitely do. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I studied urban planning, and I know all of the bad things about Pruitt-Igoe. We opened the show with Pruitt-Igoe being blown up. In the chapter of my urban planning book, that's the picture of the housing chapter. And so St. Louis has not done a really good job of just saying, really dispelling those bad stories and moving on and going, we have so much more here. We have a great park system. We have great cultural organizations that marvel or that rival cultural centers and cultural, like the St. Louis Symphony. It's one of the best symphonies in the entire world, not just in the region or in the United States. And we take those things for granted. We don't really, we take them for granted as though it's always just that thing on Powell.
Tara, same. Would you ever have a different perspective when someone else is with you not from here? Or?
I'm not from here, and this is the first city I've lived in that wasn't home. But it's really easy to consider St. Louis home because it's a very comfortable place. And I think even I come from what a lot of people consider a bigger city, which is San Francisco, and there are a lot of amenities there, of course, but I would actually argue that St. Louis has as much available to you at any given time, and it's a lot more accessible. Yeah, exactly. And that makes it a great place to start something here as well. Kind of as Randy mentioned, it's really easy to have an impact here, and also, just to get your hands dirty fast and learn things, and it's forgiving enough of a city that you can make some mistakes and kind of just grow from that.
Is that what you're telling people through your organization?
Yeah, so I work for Innovate St. Louis. We're a nonprofit that supports entrepreneurs, and we do that largely through mentoring. And that's something really great about St. Louis. We have a really unique program that would be hard to establish in another city because so much of what we offer is actually sourced from volunteers. And these are, veteran entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, or really experienced business, corporate execs, people who just want to give their time to help support first-time business starters and young ventures, and that's really unique. And in another city, I think it'd be a lot more cutthroat, and there wouldn't be that sense of collaboration and wanting to help others that would make an organization like ours possible.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think it also something that shouldn't be overlooked is the relative affordability of this city. You can attempt to try something and take a risk and fall down, and your life isn't necessarily ruined by it because the cost of living is lower. And so I think that kind of nurtures an environment of what should be an environment for risk takers.
Harder to do your shop in a...
Yeah, it wouldn't even be possible to do what I do, in the same capacity in a coastal city or a sexier city. But I'm able to do it here.
And you're making it sexier, too.
Look, and you are just by the minute I can hear it. I bet the Twitter feed is full.
And see, I think that's an important topic because it allows us to play above our weight. I think St. Louis has the ability, because of the accessibility of our resources and things, we can actually compete with larger cities and play above our weight a little bit, and that's something we should sell. We should sell.
Well,
And
go ahead.
Last comment to the lady.
well, I was going to say, from not the most exciting comment, but from an economic standpoint, I actually am constantly surprised at the diversity of industry represented here. There's so much really to learn from and to network across industries. I'm just constantly impressed by the collaboration that happens here.
There's something going on exciting right now in St. Louis. A lot of people are talking about online, and we wanted to bring it into tonight's topic, conversation, called Rally STL. Take a look.
It started out as frustration.
I started to see, kind of a series of national news reports. Some of them were actually parodies, like from The Onion, really kind of framing the quality of life here in a way that I knew not to be true.
That led to a national article.
I wrote the Forbes piece really as kind of this more of a knee-jerk frustration than anything else.
Which created quite a buzz.
Yeah, I was shocked. You could tell there was this it kind of lit a fire under a large number of people.
That fire became an idea. The idea was to create a place for even more ideas.
It's done in phases. Uses some big fancy terms, crowdsourcing and crowdfunding and all of that. But in short, it's an open platform to get your ideas out there.
Ideas like this one.
The Food Roof Project is a downtown urban agricultural farm that Urban Harvest STL would like to build here in downtown St. Louis. It's really a community-based agricultural platform.
The Food Roof is one of the top 5 ideas voted on in the month of December on Rally St. Louis, a new website where locals can post their community projects.
There's a lot of people out there that we think have great ideas. They're driving home from their job and it's like, oh, you know what we should do, or you know what St. Louis should do, but it dies there.
So it's freezing out in the middle of winter, but hopefully come summertime, this will be a beautiful growing green space, a rooftop farm. Well, I think a project like the Food Roof is going to help put St. Louis on the map. It's community projects like this that gain attention not only locally, but also attract people to come to St. Louis and see what it's all about.
It got more votes than any other of the ideas. And I think that in and of itself was pretty fascinating, that it wasn't something that was, say, related to the Cardinals or related to the things that have typically defined St. Louis. It's an organic garden on a roof.
Aaron Perlett and Brian Cross are marketing professionals by trade, but Rally was born out of a mutual love of all things St. Louis.
I don't think there's any one thing besides pork sticks that makes St. Louis unique.
Well, most things.
And Prevail, which is not fit for human consumption. But I think it's the collection of these things.
I'm going to skip all of the zoo and symphony and all that, because I think we all know that those are phenomenal. I think what makes St. Louis great is we have a vigor and a vibe and some good talent that's coming in and really seeing that they can make a difference.
December's top 5 ideas, including Food Roof, are now working with Brian and Aaron to take their project to the next level. In February, St. Louisans can actually start pledging donation to these first 5 ideas. In this phase, projects must raise all funds in order to move forward towards completion. And it doesn't stop there. The process continues each month with new ideas.
It's fun to go out and talk to the media and have a lot of people say this is a great idea, but until something is funded and done, that's going to be the tipping point. So if we can get maybe a minimum entry price dollar.
But for this group, and for St. Louis, it's not just about the individual projects. It's bigger than that.
We're in this midst of this revitalization, and there's such an opportunity to have an impact on the change here. So the people are amazing, the opportunities are great. I just love that St. Louis has that energy about it, and they're open to new and innovative ideas, and everybody just wants to make it a better place.
Rally it's a very optimistic, we're going to rally and win, but if you think about it, you don't rally unless you're coming from a spot where you're losing. And I think that's what's interesting about St. Louis is we're not trying to PR our way out of a problem. We're not saying St. Louis is great, don't worry about the problems over here. We're acknowledging we could be better, but there's such potential and there's such vigor, and you think about people in a rally putting their hats on backwards and waving, I mean, they believe. and they believe that what they do affects the outcome of the game.
Okay, now we know what we would like our city to be, where we'd like to go, but I've also heard a lot about telling people about it. That's who's with us right now. We have two gentlemen who do just that, talking branding STL, I guess would be a way to think about this. John Paw from Anastasis Films.
Correct.
We're going to see a little of your work later, so get your best like late night talk show, big time movie director, game face on.
He can do that.
So where I ask you, tell me about this clip we're about to see. You act like you have no idea what I'm talking about. And Brian Hall with St. Louis Civic Pride Foundation. Rally's kind of doing a little branding now. What do you think of that? It's kind of, I think the idea, as we heard there, is to kind of bring it from the bottom up. You know, there's also a lot of projects that are kind of top down. What do you think as someone who's in the branding business?
We're really big proponents of everything that Rally STL is doing right now. I look at it from the standpoint that a brand, a lot of people want to associate a brand with a tagline and a mark. But the fact is, Casey, that a brand is much more diverse than that and much more meaningful than just simply a mark and a tagline. I think that a brand is a mental file folder in a person's mind that pops open with images and emotions and words that they associate with a brand for whatever the product might be, or in our case, the city of St. Louis.
So what is our brand right now? That's a hard question
Good
to ask.
question.
And we've heard it a little bit tonight already. What do you think? What is it?
So Brian and I have had a couple of different meetings, but and he's explained that there's an external brand. But from an internal perspective, I think it's conflicted, right? You have people who are extremely proud about St. Louis. We're also we recognize that it's not something. It's not this or not that. And what I would like to see the shift in is that we are this. This is who we are. We are proud of it instead of having the extra baggage. And as well as, I would say, branding-wise, I would say a lot of people say it's affordable. A lot of people say it's this. And I also heard it's the gayest city in America, one of the gayest cities in America. Okay, those are fantastic things. I would say that we have incredible culture. We have incredible people, food, all these other things that a lot of times people don't necessarily talk about words-wise or accentuate. And I think I would love to see more of that.
So in changing the internal, go ahead, Brian.
Well, in addition to my role as on behalf of the St. Louis Civic Pride Foundation, I'm also the Chief Marketing Officer for the St. Louis Convention and Visitors Commission. We're responsible for basically creating brand perceptions throughout the entire region. In fact, around the nation when it comes to inviting individual travelers to come to St. Louis or bringing meetings and conventions to St. Louis. The way we frame the brand is we create a really interesting contrast, if you will. Simply put, the shorthand for the brand that I use is Cosmo without the crap. You're never going to find that in a tagline, but here's the idea, Casey. As a result of the fact...
Hang on, I got to write that down.
As a result of the fact...
Somebody tweet that.
That's 2 C's, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Cosmo without the crap. And what that means is this, that we offer you everything that you expect of a first-tier, world-class, cosmopolitan city experience. We have nightlife, we have dining, we have culture, we have entertainment. We've got all of that you expect out of a city much larger than St. Louis, like Chicago. But what we don't have is we don't have the downsides that you tend to experience from some of those larger metro areas, again, like a Chicago. We don't have the cost, we don't have the competition for resources, meaning you don't have to wait in line, and we don't have the congestion. We can actually move about the community. So we summarize that within the context of our marketing campaigns, and St. Louis is all within reach. And the tough thing about being us, to be candid with you, is that all the marketing that we run is actually directed to people outside of here. So they're inspired by our advertising campaigns when we run them in Chicago or Memphis or Indianapolis or any one of the cities that we run these campaigns in. They come here, they're charmed, they're delighted, they're blown away by everything that we have to offer. What we'd love to be able to do is actually turn that campaign on us as residents of St. Louis
Absolutely.
to unleash civic pride here.
So what we were saying just a second, it's almost like we have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder that gives us a pride in our neighborhoods, in our infrastructure, like Randy was talking about. But maybe you have a little bit of a self-confidence problem. Is that as a region?
Well, I mean, we latch on to things like, don't get me wrong, I love the Cardinals, and I like the Rams. And you know, we are definitely proud of our sports teams. We latch onto those things as a point of major pride. And yet I think there's just, again, there's a fullness, I think Brian was describing, a fullness of our city that we aren't appreciating because things like crime, things like whatever it's going to be, seem to eclipse those things, which I think are sad because there's no reason why they should, and the media latches onto that.
Now, it's not an either-or proposition. It doesn't have to be, I would guess. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to give up your pride in the Cardinals and the Rams to love whatever else there might be that we could elevate.
Right. It doesn't eclipse your opportunity to love the neighborhood that you run, that you live in.
Absolutely.
It doesn't. If you're a bike enthusiast and you like cycling throughout the community, plus you like going to Cardinal games, that's cool too. Brands can be multidimensional. This community is indeed multidimensional. There's such a diverse range of experiences that you can have as a St. Louisan. One night you can go to the Opera Theater at Webster University and on their campus. The next night you can be eating barbecue at Pappy's. The fact is that you can fall in love with a lot of different aspects of St. Louis. And I think that's what makes us unique as well, because there's no shortage of things to do.
Is it turning? Is that tide starting to turn a little bit? That internal.
I agree. Yes, absolutely.
And do you guys see that?
Yeah, we definitely see it, and we've talked about the fact that we think. Have you read Malcolm Gladwell's book called The Tipping Point?
No, but it's funny you should say that. A friend of mine just loaned it to me, and I'm the last to read every book you've ever seen in the airport. So,
well, be thinking about St. Louis when you read what Gladwell has to say about brands really coming into their own and appealing to more and more people. And all of a sudden, the mavens come in, the opinion leaders around the nation, and they discover us, and they're talking about everything that's happening here and the urban inversion and the resurgence that's taking place in the community. And I predict within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have a major acceleration in our growth moving forward.
I completely agree. I mean, I was just seeing in the past 3 or 4 years, and we talked about this before, is that you see a critical mass. He's using a tipping point. I've been saying there's a critical mass that's happening, and whenever I look, and I know a lot of other entrepreneurs who look around St. Louis, and I'm going to talk about specifically the city. You just all you see is opportunity. Yeah. You see these beautiful buildings. You see these business owners. You can get something very affordably, bring it back to life, and have your business in it.
You can also make a beautiful piece of film. Would you like to set this clip up for us, or should we just toss to it cold?
It's just a film that we created in order to show that we love St. Louis. That was it.
And it went viral, I think is safe to say. This is John Paul's work. Okay, we're joined now by Todd Swanstrom from the University of Missouri St. Louis to help us We've talked about a lot tonight. We've covered a lot of ground, and as we do every week, we bring someone in, put them in the hot seat, and ask them to wrap it all up and put a nice bow on it for us. So I'll start by asking, no small task, and do it in 5 minutes, please.
Sure.
And make it
sure,
dynamic.
Casey. It's
Put some dynamite in it while you're at it. Well, what's striking you in this conversation? Anything surprise you tonight?
Oh, it's a fascinating conversation because St. Louis has some sort of complex, about itself. But what my line is, every weakness has a strength, and you can choose what you want to see, what you want to focus on. Sometimes we as a region seem to focus on deficits, not assets, on problems instead of opportunities. But they're really flip sides of the same thing. So, the line is, seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. If you believe in something, you can see it there. And I think we need to change our civic conversation to start focusing on assets and opportunities instead of problems. So we saw that tonight. I think one example of this thinking is we're a very fragmented region. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about that. So we'll focus on fragmentation, but fragmentation has a flip side. We have these strong local communities. We have these neighborhoods and parishes that are tight, where people really work with each other and do great things. I work in community development, and if you start thinking about the city and the suburbs, there's all these communities with this buzz going, these really interesting places. The Central West End, there's the Loft District, there's Soulard, there's South Grand, there's Shaw, there's the Loop, there's, you go on and on. And then there's Manchester and there's Ferguson, where things are happening. You have the brew pubs. So we're fragmented, but at the same time, we have these great, strong communities, and we should celebrate them and lift them up. They're great.
Do different, what's the best way to say this? I'll just say different generations. That's a bad label, but does the establishment, maybe that's one way to say it, does the establishment and then the young entrepreneur, do different ends of the spectrum there see our city differently, or see how to change the perception differently?
Yes, I do think there's a generational difference. I think, as one of your guests said, I think young people do not see this dying city. They see all of the opportunities that are here, and they're dug into some of these urban scenes where things are happening, and I think they really see it. And I also think they're not beset. The region, I think, has a real history of racism, a bad history. And for young people, it's passé in large part. They want to go on to a new conversation. We want to kind of get through that racial divide and come out the other end as a community. And I think that's one thing that's blocked us from really moving forward. But my other comment, Casey, is that it's the outsiders that see the positive in St. Louis. It's the people who grew up here sometimes who seem to focus on the problems more than the assets. So it's funny, when my wife and I got here, we said, this is fantastic. We bought a house and we're 5 minutes from Forest Park. It's got 36 holes of golf. I'm a golfer, right? And I can join for almost nothing. And there's all these assets you can plug into. And we're not the booming metropolis, but that means, of course, that we have a reasonable cost of living. It also means that you can fit in, you can make yourself heard here. You go to New York or Boston, it might take you years ever to find a place in that crowded ecology, right? But here you can make yourself heard.
And be a lot harder to open a t-shirt shop, even in Chicago or anywhere else.
Exactly.
Like we were talking about earlier, or the money to do that, and the space and the time and the energy. So does the message, so it sounds like you're saying the positive message is getting through to outsiders. Do we need, as Brian and John were saying, do we need to refocus our efforts internally?
I think you have to change the narrative, and St. Louisans have to change what they say about themselves. We need to change the story we tell about ourselves before the outside is going to believe us. We have to believe in ourselves before outsiders will believe in us. So we should concentrate on, we have to practice this. I think I should maybe do this with you, Casey. KETC is one of the great public television stations in the country. It really is.
Right.
It's one of the best. So maybe we should practice where you say, we're one of the best in the country. Can you say that?
We are one of the best in the country. Actually, I happen to know that, and I believe it.
And you can say it.
And I hope we're seeing it here tonight.
Well, St. Louisans are, full of, there's a modesty, there's a kind of Midwestern modesty that maybe you shouldn't brag.
Yeah.
But we got to learn to brag. I mean, it's okay, to say you're one of the best.
Let's see if there's some bragging Todd Swanstrom from the University of Missouri St. Louis on Twitter right now. We'll see what the folks are saying.
Okay.
Ed, on social media tonight, you saw?
You know, consistently, the fact that we have such great parks, free museums, you know, cultural events, the fact that we're rich in that is universal, and we're trending in the region on Twitter right now.
Stay tuned STL?
Stay tuned STL.
Is it positive?
It's very positive.
So what we've also heard a lot tonight, I believe, is that we have to, what we just heard Todd say, kind of believe it ourselves first, change that narrative. Sounds like from everything we've heard tonight, folks outside of St. Louis appreciate us more than we appreciate ourselves, perhaps.
I think it's true. I think it's about creating and telling our story.
Should we keep talking about this?
We are going to keep talking about it.
Let's do
In fact,
that.
Stick around.
Okay,
right?
yes. We have the post show online. If you can find us online. Do you know the link? Say it real quick.
I do. If you just go to staytuned.9net.org, you can check us right there, /live.
Okay, very good. Until next week, stay tuned.
The arts have the power to expand our minds, enrich our lives, and provide endless entertainment. But the value goes far beyond our experiences with the arts. Next week on Stay Tuned, we explore how the arts in St. Louis are affecting our local economy in a big way. What are the issues that are important to you and to the St. Louis region? Share your insights. We want your ideas for a future episode of Stay Tuned. Call 314-512-9009 or email us at staytuned@ketc.org. Would you like to be a live audience member on Stay Tuned? Email us at audience@ketc.org. And you can always connect with Stay Tuned on Facebook and Twitter.
Everybody sit down.
It's the school of last resort. Some students here have been expelled, committed crimes, even served time in juvenile detention. And many of them were sentenced in Jimmy Edwards' courtroom.
My interest is making sure
they are really friendly, nice.
I love jazz. There's a very good jazz venues here.
They have great food, good shopping.
My kids actually really like downtown. They like the arch, they like playing down there.
Delmar Loop, beautiful. I mean, St. Louis is me. Just recently discovered 2720 Cherokee. They have a lot of different concerts and stuff that are so odd and, you know, unusual.
My favorite hidden gem in St. Louis would be the City Museum. I think you can have fun there if you've never been to St. Louis. You can have fun there if you go there every weekend and you're a local. Kids, adults, it's a great place.
There is a restaurant in the city, it's called Layla. I love it. Let's have great food.
All the history behind St. Louis. I mean, it's a gateway to the West.
The Southwest Diner in Maplewood.
We go to the Loop at the restaurant called Cicero's.
The Wine Press. It's a wine bar and it's a well-kept secret. But I have a lot of hidden gems. I love Bar Italia too.
I had like a whole list of questions that I didn't get through tonight. I feel like so I'm glad you're here. We're still online. I don't think the FCC regulates this, but let's keep it clean anyway. So what did we miss? And we'll just this is a free for all. I don't know what didn't we talk about
I think
that we should have?
one of the things we talked about when we were back here is just how the word is getting out, and we're talking about celebrating what people are doing here, and social media allows that in a lot of ways. So, you know, we're picking up, some of us who are active on Twitter and have websites and things, we're picking up traffic from not just across the country, but from other countries. And I think that has an influence. I mean, we're breaking through and reaching an audience that's receptive to our message and not just, you know, knocking against the door.
Without a budget
right?
and a branding plan or anything.
Right. We're marketing ourselves in some respects, and I think people are responding to it.
I just have to comment on this, the most dangerous city, you know, deconstruct this fact that we're the most dangerous city. The reason we're the most dangerous city is the statistics are taken for the central city, which is such a small part of the region. It tends to be the poor, more socially disadvantaged part of the region. If you look at crime statistics for the St. Louis region, which is really what we're talking about, no, we're not. We don't rank at all in an unsafe area. So I just want to deconstruct that fact. It's not true.
I get tired of us defending that. I want to say, yeah, we are dangerous, and we live here, and we're proud of it. That's all right. Like we're not afraid to whatever it is, afraid of walking at night. It's like we still live here, we work here, we create here, and like for example, I don't ever hear like some Israeli saying, "Oh, it's the most dangerous." Like
right.
What? They're like, no, I'm Israeli. I'm like, yeah, you are. And so I want to have the same thing. You're like, I'm a St. Louisan. Yes, you are.
So it's part of the appeal of the city.
Well, I want to say it's the appeal of the city, but I don't want to apologize for it.
I agree. I think it is. It's way overhyped. I think the perception is reality, unfortunately. But I still think I agree with John that I think we got to stop making excuses for it. The truth is, if people don't feel safe, you're only going to reach so much success. People need to feel safe where they live.
True.
And that said, in reality, 90% of the neighborhoods in the city of St. Louis are as safe as any major city neighborhood in the country. So we do have a problem with crime.
Well, one of the research shows that if you get your news from, unfortunately, television, you think places are dangerous.
Right.
Because if it bleeds, it leads, and there's all this
that's another show
hype
altogether.
about crime. When in fact, as you're absolutely right, it's a very safe place to live.
Look, this is part of the problem. There is we're not taking possession of our own story.
Yeah.
So Chicago does not appear on those rankings, right? They literally just split the way they report, and so this firm that puts out the rankings can't line them up in a spreadsheet. That's literally it.
Well,
now Rahm Emanuel is not going to allow his city to show up on the most dangerous list.
Well,
But maybe it's a trick.
I'm glad you mentioned
but
Chicago. I'm hesitant to admit in this table of St. Louis that I actually was born in Chicago and grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I'm a White Sox fan. We actually have won a world. We've won a world championship, but. When I posted on Twitter or Facebook today, I was going to be on this show and we're talking about St. Louis. One of my friends from Chicago derisively talked about St. Louis and kind of made a comment about how St. Louis was inferior to Chicago. And I have to tell you, I have roots in the city. My grandfather grew up in St. Louis City, went to Soldan High School. I guess there was the prohibition on high school, but I'll mention that there. And, I do think that there is something about people who have lived here for a long time and people who have come here, recent transplants like myself, even though things are definitely not perfect and we don't want to be complacent in things, I do think that living in the city or even parts of the county or just the region, you do feel like you're investing in something and you feel like you belong to something that's a lot different than, say, Chicago.
Something I think we have to do to kind of come back to a point that you made about seeing the opportunity there.
Yes.
Like there are things that we have here that we're involved in, like when you look at the crime statistics and just crime overall, there are things that ameliorate crime, such as social structures and community and things like that. And if we can talk about those types of things that we do, i.e. Our involvement with the United Way or involvement with Urban League or involvement with those kind of social associations, which St. Louis has very, very high numbers of involvement in those areas. Off the chart, when you consider us against other regions. That's a way to talk about and own the story. Instead of talking about crime, let's talk about the type of civic engagement we have, the giving roles that we do in United Way. Our United Way is ranked, in terms of our population, we're ranked number 18, but our giving is like 13. So we actually, again, and we
charitable giving and volunteers among the highest in the nation.
There's other simpler things.
Here, lean in because you don't have a mic.
Sorry, yeah.
Jeez, this could get.
There's other simpler things that we can do to bring down that image of our city as a dangerous place too. Streetlights that are closer to the sidewalk, actually illuminating the place where people can walk. I've got friends who don't want to walk from the 6th North building at Laclede and Sarah to SLU's campus because when they come back home at night from the library, it's dark. There's no one else walking around.
I disagree because I think that those things play on fear. I'm not disagreeing that those infrastructure needs are there, but I'm saying we have positive things that we can play upon that also tell a better story.
You want to talk about change of conversation?
I mean, just to expand on that, I think if we create an environment that's inviting and vibrant, safety is going to follow that.
Exactly.
And as long as streets and sidewalks are desolate, and we can blame all kinds of factors on why that is so in way too many neighborhoods in the city, but we really do need to, I think, once again, really invest in the infrastructure that we have. We are so lucky to have a built environment in this city that can run with the best cities in the country. The urban fabric here is second to none, really. And I think if we promote density and preservation of our historic buildings versus tearing them down for parking lots, then we will, over time, attract people to occupy them. Because there is a shift back to cities. It's trending that way, and I think St. Louis is well positioned to be a leader in that, as long as we don't destroy everything that makes us a city.
Is that changing a little bit? Two things come to mind. The story you told me once of Soulard, and then there was an effort to raise that area.
The 1947.
And now it's one of our most
exactly. Well, and we needn't look beyond our most vibrant and sought-after neighborhoods in the city. They're the ones that didn't tear everything down. You know, a lot of the Lafayette Square, Central West End, the Hill. Park. You know, these are the Benton Park, right? I mean, we can learn lessons from what already exists here.
One of the reasons we have this great urban fabric is we built the city before zoning codes started separating uses. So we're fortunate. It was built back in the mercantile age when they needed walkability. You didn't have a car, so you had to be able to walk to things. So we have this mixed retail mixed in with housing, and it has great opportunities. It turns out history has turned the curve, and now it's come back in. Just like maybe some of my ties that were a little bit out of date, now are coming back. At least that's my argument.
Don't be so confident in your current ties.
I think there are 2 quick points I want to make that St. Louis has a very, very high percentage of native residents. So, and some other places do. Pittsburgh does, some other places. But I think you have a generation of people whose parents and grandparents said, don't go to the city, don't go to the Central West End. And frankly, if you grow up from 8 years old to 38 years old hearing that, you can't just decide to overcome that. I mean, this is ingrained in what you know about the city. And I think the other side of that is we don't have as many people here as some other cities who've traveled and lived in other cities. Now, I travel to Boston often for work. There are some horrible parts of Boston that are unsafe, that are very dangerous. There are lots of homeless people in downtown Boston. But here it happens, and people think, oh, look what's wrong with St. Louis. This is horrible here. It's like every city has it. Every city has it.
Yeah, like Joe Wilson said at the beginning, I used to live in Columbia with him. We actually were in college at the same time. And when it came time for me to move from Columbia to the St. Louis area because I had work here, my grandpa, said the exact same things you did, and he's from St. Louis City. He grew up in the Central Corridor. He wanted me. What did you say?
It was impossible to convince them otherwise, too.
Yeah.
My dad lived in some of the worst parts of St. Louis, and there's nothing I can do to convince him.
He wanted me to move to Clayton, and I decided, I wanted to be in a place where things to do with young people, with various infrastructural activities, and I moved to the city, met my wife. We now live in South City, and I don't know, all candor, I don't know if we'll stay in the actual city proper or move to the county once we buy a house, but I can tell you that, we couldn't be happier living where we are right now.
Joe, you're never short on opinions. You haven't said a word in the post show.
Well,
so we've got you here. We want to get the most we can out of you.
Squeeze it out of you.
Do you carry your awards with you? Because we all like to see it, actually.
They're in a vault.
Okay. So what's on your mind?
Well, a lot of perspectives. This is a big topic. It's very broad.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of ways to get in. So I'm enjoying the conversation, and it's an illustrious, intelligent group of individuals. But I just think it's interesting he's got that. But I think St. Louis has a history. You're talking about areas in danger, and the older generations like don't go here. It's bad here. Well, there's the racial divide.
Yeah.
And there are the things about our history that we have to overcome.
Yeah, that only came up once and at the end tonight, and it probably should have been a theme a lot sooner in the conversation.
Yeah, and it's like it's a matter of addressing it and moving on, and it happens with the dialogue within the communities. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best thing that could possibly be going on, that people are getting together and talking, and again addressing like what is good, what's not good, why, and figuring things out. So being a person that was born and raised here. Left, I had great success, and I've traveled the world and been around. I'm very happy to be from here and to be able to work here. There's something unique and special about it, and I'm hoping that we can get to where we're.
Do you think African Americans are, boy, my, it's
Just
more,
don't do too good of a job. I want to come back next week.
Yeah, right, exactly. Is there more of a feeling of comfort, in race relations among professional class people? I mean, they'll say like Atlanta is a great place to be, a African American professional, looking for building your career.
Together, being the African American males on the panel here, I think growth is needed. If it doesn't fare well, from what I could see from my contemporaries and speaking, that it's not as friendly, from a social standpoint. If someone's not from here, and there's the high school game we always put the question.
Yeah,
they're pretty much alienated. So the structure doesn't exist.
It's really about finding the right connections and connectivity. If you find the right mentor or a set of mentors, you can navigate. But if you don't, it's very difficult to navigate because the community sometimes is somewhat bifurcated, because that's the flip side of that positive neighborhood kind of thing. The other part of it is that the community sometimes balkanize themselves, and we have to kind of recognize that sometimes is going on. Maybe sometimes they don't realize it is, but it happens. And the way through that is you have to find a person to mentor you and connect you through.
I'm sorry. I have to stop because even the live stream has the limit. I'm so sorry.
So we're just gonna keep talking.
We'll keep talking. We've set up an excellent topic for a future show, I feel like. So, but we're gonna bump out with a little more of John's work, and then we'll be off the air. Thank you, guys.
Baby, I'm not walking away.